So the last two lessons are back live now, if you want to go back and watch them. This one tonight, after we post it, I'll make it private. Just because I don't want some of our church folks going in and watching it before I teach them. I don't know. Some of them were trying to get a jump on it.
We would never do that.
They can be here. So anyway, but the other two are now live. If you did miss one of those lessons, you can go back and watch it. It's on our church's YouTube page, and there's I don't know if it says live, and you click on live, and then it's those lessons. But we're gonna get started tonight. I brought all the charts. I brought everything tonight. We're just gonna dig into a whole bunch of stuff. So and last week I passed out handouts that's replicas of this. I'm out of those. If we need to get some more made, it's pretty easy. Just let me know how many more we need made, and UPS store can whip those out for us. So we've covered from Adam all the way through Noah, and then Noah over here to the flood. We've talked a lot about all that. Tonight we are going to go from Shem to Abraham. So I'm going to zoom up on this one now. You can see we're just got all kinds of, I need this later. I don't want it right now, but I need it later. Let's put this down. Now everybody can see. I'll get there. Shem all the way to Abraham. So, a few hundred years we're going to cover. Just to let y'all know, I'm also working on, it may end up being a two-part lesson that just focus on this blue right here, the Nimrod, Tower of Babel, all these people groups, when the world split, all the nations split, the impact of religion on the world. I have I want to call it a very, I'm just going to say interesting, lesson that charts out not just the flow and migration of people, but the migration of religion. And that shows where basically all world religion started at the Tower of Babel. And it's pretty eye-opening. And to some degrees, for some people, it's almost too eye-opening. It's shocking, some of the similarities, and then how when certain religions began to take shape, how they would change and mix other religions in with them, and it's crazy how it all happened. But it's just because of how people migrated, how nations were formed. Some nations used religion as their government, and some didn't, and others did. And anyway, it's
okay. Say that one more time. All religions basically.
You can draw every single world religion back to this area right in here, this time frame. Yep. At least some part of it. And I'm saving that one because there is an artifact that is on display at the Louvre in Paris, France. And on March the 7th, I'll be there. So, with Kelby. That's our little London-Paris little getaway that week. So, but I need a picture of that artifact. I want to say that I've seen it. Of course, can't touch it, but it's something that works into that lesson. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, so once I have that and we get all put together, then I'll lay that big old Bible study on you. So.
Rick?
Yes, ma'am.
I just today read, and I think it was on Fox News, they reported that they believe they have found evidence of the spirals to the tower in Iraq.
Mm-hmm. That Bible lesson, I'm going to show you some Google Earth images that I think goes with that story.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Some of it though is quite. I've taught it one other time, a part of this lesson, and it's almost unnerving. It's strange how it's like, wow, this is not just I'm learning information. It's, I don't know, it's crazy. Anyway, I can't wait for that one. We'll have fun with tonight we're going with the descendants of Shem. Shem. So let's start out here. Genesis chapter 10, verse 22. Somebody that wants to tackle some names. Marlis laughed first, so that you.
Great. The children of Shem, Elam, Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram.
All right. From this, we can find 5 major nations, and then a lot of other things that have come from that. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you first about the 5 nations of Shem. Okay. So I need to get on my little computer here, and I have a map I want to show y'all. I hope it's clear enough. Yes. Okay. Anyone recognize where we're at here? Can y'all see this over there? Y'all can move these chairs.
There's so much room right here.
Yeah,
You wanna
if y'all,
get
I want to
closer?
make sure everybody can see all this stuff. So
And there's a chair right.
just to make sure everybody kind of knows what all's going on here. This is, of course, Africa. This is Spain, Europe. We're over here. This part right here is Israel. Okay. This particular map is kind of made just a little weird. The Persian Gulf should probably come down here, but it doesn't. But anyway, so this is Iraq right here. Iran is over there, and it goes on that way. Everybody understand the map? We all good with the map? Okay. So what you're going to see here is every name that's in purple is a descendant of Shem, whether it's the direct son or grandson. The descendants of Ham is this orange color, and then the descendants of Japheth is green. And I talked to you last time about how the descendants of Japheth are the ones that made their way up into this area and then later on filled in all of Europe and some other Russia. If you study in the Bible about Gog and Magog, end time prophecy kind of stuff, okay, well, that's Russia and Germany and all that kind of stuff. So what this is showing is that when God created everything, of course, most people believe that the Garden of Eden was, between the Tigris, Euphrates rivers, right here, we call it Mesopotamia. Anytime you're studying world history, world civilization, they're going to talk about Mesopotamia. And everybody agrees that all humanity come from that general area. Okay, so that's this area right in here. And then they begin to spread out, and I talked to you last week about how a lot of that happened. So we've had an interesting thing happen. So for Christmas, Kelby and I received the 23andMe DNA chromosome tracking, tell you who your family stuff is. So it was from her brother-in-law, and so like all of her family, we're all going to do it and make sure we're related.
Or not.
Yeah, we're not. There's actually, anybody else done that yet? Okay.
We've done
You've done it?
the Ancestry one.
The
And I
Ancestry?
sent the kids the 23andMe.
Okay, so when you send that one off, that you have to check this box that says, basically, I understand that I might be shocked by the results. Because there's been times people found out, like, this person, this girl and her sisters didn't match, and it didn't even say they were related, so they both went to mom, said, what's up? And mom says, you were adopted. Like you could have told me. Something like, anyway, one of them, it said that her dad, when it did the link, her dad lived in some other state. And so she went to her mom and was like, what's up with this? Her mom was like, don't tell your dad. And that's kind of, there was an affair that happened. Anyway, it was kind of fun. So Kelby got hers back. I haven't got mine back yet. But something on it, like when I saw it, y'all, of course I'm studying all this stuff. What it does is it puts you in certain groups, okay? And it can trace back to where what they call the mother of your lineage started from. They can trace it all the way back to those Neolithic groups. How they can do it, I don't know. But what was really cool for Kelby's, it says that hers the first group would have started somewhere in this area right here. And then they migrated to this area, and then migrated to this area, and then settled in Northern Europe, France, England, places like that. And it said that the biggest majority of her, 64% of her chromosomes, all direct back to one city, London. And that's been her dream town to go to forever. And I was like, your ancestors are calling you home. One of those kind of deals. But it was so cool that when you see her trace, it's the exact same migration pattern of these people. It was just cool. You know, you're like, yeah, science is proving the Bible again. You know, it's one of
Wouldn't it
those
be
kind
so
of,
sweet if yours did the same thing and yours species?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I thought quite humorous is Kelby is 99.5% that Northeastern Europe, Anglo-Saxon white. She's 0.1% Native American,
I was gonna.
okay? Which means there's a remaining 0.4, right? West African.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, can't you tell? So in her lineage, there it showed up on 3 different lines of chromosomes. Of the 23, it showed up on 3 of them. That she has descendants from the Senegal, Guinea, West Africa group. I just thought that was kind of cool. Anyway.
Boy, when you get yours, now that's
Who knows? Yeah. So anyway, just fun facts. But what I wanted to point out there, though, it was so neat that they could trace her subgroups back, and it literally followed some of these people's subgroups. Like here, it's pretty neat how we all did originate from this area right here. Okay, so we have these 5 nations. Let's get into this. Elam. These were the people who became the Persians. Okay, so Elam is right here. They located east of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. The Persians, again, settled northeast of the Persian Gulf. If you know history, you've read about the Medes and the Persians, right? So the Persians, they trace their lineage back to this one man named Elam, which was a son of Shem, grandson of Noah. Okay? Let's go to the next one. The next one is Asher. So Asher's right here, northern area. The land settled between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. We call that the Assyrians. Remember from history, the Assyrians that conquered Rome and all that good stuff. I'm so glad I paid attention in World Civ, because now a lot of it's making sense now. So we have the Assyrians right here. Try that name out. I'm going with Arphaxad. I don't know. They became the Chaldeans, or what we call the Babylonians. So they settled right down in that area, right there along the Gulf side, right in there. Fun fact, there is a community that has been unearthed. The name of it was, whatever that says there, Arphaxaditus. I think it's pretty interesting that the name of it means the city of 4 sacred fish. What in the world? I have no explanation for that. I'm just telling y'all, it's called 4 sacred fish. I don't know, maybe my fishing, that just kind of, I don't know. Thought that was a fun fact. So if you're ever on Jeopardy, they say 4 sacred fish. There you go. Lud. See right here, you're over here where Turkey is now. They became the Lydians, settled in Asia Minor and also in North Africa. Some say that where Libya is, some in that area right there. It's not necessarily on this map, but pretty much this span right here over the Mediterranean Sea, west of what we call Israel, north of Egypt, that little span right there, that's where they settled along those coastal towns, right in there. That would have been, if you study Revelations, we're talking Pergamos, we're talking Laodicea, all those, the 7 churches of Book of Revelations, a lot of those are in that general area right there. Then we have Aram, which became the Syrians. So that's right here in this area, right here. Would have been west of the Euphrates River. north of Israel right there. They settled north and east of Israel. That's modern day Syria. And it's so cool when you start studying human history, how much of it in the Bible lines up together. You know, there's a whole lot in the Bible that people want to question and they want to, you know, but when you start lining it all up, okay, the question is, well, why do we need to know all this? Why is this important to study all this? Well, first of all, and I've told y'all this before, if God felt it worthy of putting in his book, then we should at least have some awareness of it, okay? Because what it does is it helps you when you get later on into the book and you find out who all the Israelites are fighting, who they're being taken captive by, who they're conquering. It just helps the whole thing make more sense, okay? And then, when you get into the prophetic books, okay, you get into Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Isaiah, and then even into Revelations, all of a sudden these names start being thrown out, okay? There was one prophecy I looked up. It said something about how that the folks of Elam were going to come back. Well, at that time, that didn't make any sense until you go back and realize, oh wait, he's talking about the descendants of Shem, the Elam. That's those folks that became, you know, the Persians over here. So in the prophecy, God is speaking through these people and giving these, you know, sometimes very harsh prophecies. And it's like, well, I don't know who that person is until you go back into Genesis and you look at who they became. And it's like, oh, now I can understand. He's talking about the Persians. He's talking about the, you know, the Syrians. Well, why didn't he just say that? I don't know. He's God. he likes mysteries, and that's the whole point of this particular Bible study. Any questions on that right there? Those 5 nations? Any thoughts, questions, anything? Nope. All right, let's keep going here. Genesis 10:23. Who wants to tackle that one?
Not me.
I'll go easy on you then. How about it, Shannon?
I hated that you did that.
That you hated that I did that. These are kind of easier.
Genesis 10:23, and the children of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Ash.
See? Just right there on the pages.
Just trying
How
to
many of y'all would
hurry
just blow right by those names?
Right by.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Just, you probably wouldn't even take time to even sound them out. Right?
Right.
Well, I have another map. I want somebody to look up Job chapter 1 verse 1. Who's got it? Anybody? Jackie.
In the land of Uz, or I'm assuming Uz or Uz or
We're
whatever.
going with us.
Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil.
Huh. Now, how many of us know about Job? Where'd he live? Land of Uz. Right? His neighbor was not Dorothy. Know what you're thinking. So we did some digging. The best that they can figure is that Uz is located somewhere in this area right here. Now, to give you some perspective, of course, this is Israel. Okay? This is Israel. You've got the Dead Sea here, Egypt. This is Chaldea, Babylon. There's your Tigris, Euphrates. This is Mesopotamia right here. Land of Uz would have been over here in this direction somewhere. Okay? So if anybody ever asks you, where Job lived? Well, he lived southeast of Israel, modern day Israel. Okay? If you're ever just buzzing through Lamentations, I know that's a book y'all just love to read, right?
Yes.
4:21, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The Edomites. Edom. Anybody remember anything about Edom?
No.
So Edom means red.
Yeah.
Edom was the description of the place that Esau settled. Remember Esau?
Right.
The redheaded heel grabber? Esau? Edom? See, what I'm doing here tonight is I'm And I know it doesn't have to make a whole lot of sense here, but I'm trying to connect dots for you. Oh yeah, Job lived in Uz. I've never taken time to even think about where Uz was. Well, where did Uz come from? Well, he was a great-grandson of Noah. And he migrated over. Why do I need to know that? You just never know when you might need to know that. It's good information to have. Something kind of interesting. Somebody look up. I gotta find it here. Job 22:16. So when you look at the chart, and I'm not gonna set it back up, but that's why I had it set up earlier. Job is not on the chart. I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm like, where's Job at? And the question has always been, when did Job live? Anybody want to take a guess at that one? Y'all ever been taught any suggestions of when he might have lived? What do you think?
You want me to read it?
Go ahead.
Okay, and they were carried off before their time, their foundations washed away by the flood. Is that
So
right?
Job and his friends are talking, and they're talking about people who were washed away in the flood. So what can we kind of discern from that?
They lived after the flood.
They lived after the flood.
After the flood.
Yeah. So if anybody ever asks you, you're at church, it's trivia night, somebody says, when did Job live?
After the flood.
The only answer is after the flood.
What was that verse again?
Is 22:16? Job 22:16?
Yes.
Yeah. So something else I'm doing tonight. I am trying to challenge y'all to pay attention to the details that you're reading. Because if you ever read Job, that is not an easy book to read. Especially when he's in there whining and crying, right? And we just buzz right through it. And just skip over the fact that right there, it's been there since the book of Job was written. It says they were talking after the flood. We've got this big debate on when he lived. I've heard preachers even. Now I'd love to go back to those guys and say, ha, you're wrong. You know, they've tried to say he lived just outside the Garden of Eden. There's all kinds of nonsense. I'm like, no, he lived after the flood. That's the only clue we got. We know that raiding armies from Sheba and Chaldea was who killed his family, who raided his crops and his sheep. If you ever read in there in the book of Job, they came from this area, south of there. They came from west of there, or east of there. They came over, and so he would have lived in the area. These two people raided him, which means they were alive, right? I mean, and we know kind of the timeline of when those were formed.
And how many miles is that? Like that
It's-
red arrow?
That's
what's it say?
that's a pretty good little jump right there. I have no idea. 1,000, maybe here to Florida. I'm guessing something like that. They traveled a lot back then. They were a lot more mobile than I think we give them credit for. So, any thoughts on this? Again, my whole intent right now is maybe not necessarily to teach you too much about Job, but just to challenge you, pay attention to details, okay? All right. There were 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. Now, y'all gotta know, I had to go do some name searching, right? You know what I found? Nothing. I know y'all are wanting some deep theological kind of stuff, right? So we start going through these names right here. Now, I told y'all before why some of these random names are mentioned without any descriptions. There's nothing really we know about them. So I'm going to ask you again, why do you think it was important for these names to even be listed?
Because Jesus' lineage.
Yes. Simply because they're in the lineage of Jesus. That's it. And think about that. This Ryu, whatever his name was, like literally, he barely gets a mention in the Bible, but his name does get called. Simply because he's in the lineage of Jesus. his one little shout out was just because what came after him. Most people are known by their past. He got to be known because of his future. I think that's cool. Right? Okay, so I did some searching here. Shem, Arphaxad, Selah, Eber, Peleg, Ruz, Serug, Nahor, Terah, Abraham. So Shem means name. Real deep. This means name. So notice I have under Arphaxad, it says fun fact. I'm not sure if I'm going to share this with the church. I know. Y'all ready for this? I'm going to give you the definition of his name. Of Arphaxad.
Okay.
Everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
You got your spiritual thinking caps on? Here you go. The breast has dried up. That's what his name means.
That's what our facts,
Dried up breast.
dried up
He
phrase.
must have got named after the fact.
Right. It's probably one of those, he came out and mama wasn't producing and that was his name. Can you imagine?
When she was old and tired and she was saying she was done.
She was done.
Well, best I can tell, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, those ladies are gonna get a kick out of this one. Yeah, y'all are wanting something deep and, theological, points to Jesus. No, just, yeah, that's the one thing you're gonna remember from this lesson today. Yeah. Selah, this particular Selah means sprout. Eber, you can see it, I've already got on your paper here. The region beyond. Peleg means division. Now, I talked about that one last week. You may remember the division of what? The earth. So because in his days, the earth was divided. How many of y'all missed last week? Okay. Okay. Well, 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. So that was the verse that I believe is the proof that the Lord divided the land as he divided the nations. So the continental divide, the shift, because it literally means the splitting of the division of land masses. It's not just a rift, it's full movement, okay? You have to go back and watch last time's Bible study to get all that one in there. But anyway, Nahor means friend. Terah or Torah means branch. Oh wait, I'm mixed up here.
Yeah, we are.
I skipped one. Sorry.
On Ray or Rue.
Ru is friend. Ru is friend.
Wait, Rue's friend?
Ru's friend.
Okay,
Yeah, draw your line directly.
okay.
Serug is branch.
Yeah, wait,
Yep.
okay.
Need some white out. Sorry, y'all. My bad.
The rifle's branch, okay.
Okay. Now I think it's kind of neat that Jesus is called the friend and Jesus was called the branch, and Jesus, there's some of that in there. It's kind of cool. All right, you ready for Nahor? Is this a fun fact? He who snores. That's what it means. Snorer.
That is a
And the
fun
little
fact.
catchphrase on it was to snort. And it was reference to one who snores. I don't know when he came out of the womb, maybe he was, I don't know what he was doing. Yeah. So y'all want all this deep theological stuff tonight, and that's not what's happening. All right. Terah means to delay, and Abram means high father. We'll get more into that one at a later Bible study.
Terah means delay?
To delay. Be delayed. Makes you wonder if he wasn't supposed to be born on a certain day and he wasn't ready yet. I don't know. How they got these names? Some of them, many of them are inspired by God, and some of them are just names. All right. But whether it's Snorer or the other one or whatever, you know what? It got us to Jesus. And I don't know. I just think if it's something that God wanted us to know and he put it in there, we should at least take time to kind of learn it, study it a little bit. All right. So here we go, something totally different. The descendants of Israel are often referred to as Israelites, Jews, and Hebrews. Okay, now before you read anything, just hold on. Is that not confusing?
It is.
There's Hebrews, there's Jews, there's Israelites. What in the world, right? So I'm going to give you the answers for it tonight. Israelites simply means descendant of Israel or Jacob. They always put those ites on there. Okay, my boys are Lovelites. It's that simple. Or Rickites, I guess it would be. The Jews, descendants of Judah, the son of Jacob. And it also refers to how they worship. So when you talk about Jews, now you're talking about their religious beliefs. Okay? A proselyte Jew is someone who was not born in the lineage of an Israelite, but became a Jew. So if one of us decided to be a Jew, we'd be called a proselyte Jew. We have been proselytized. I find that interesting because in America, when you talk about a proselyte, it's where generally people from one church, like a pastor, subvertly acquires members of another church. You know, like.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
So here's another little fun fact. When you refer to Jewish people, originally, so the tribe of Judah was one of 12 tribes, okay? But the tribe of Judah was one that, even when they were, being bad and living away from God, they were typically one of the ones that would always seem to come back, okay? The word Judah means praise, okay? So if you ever hear about that, Judah, that's praise. His name means praise the Lord, okay? But it's not just praise. It's a very specific form of praise. I want to demonstrate it for you.
Oh, there you go.
To praise with hands lifted. Just had to throw that.
Praise.
We sing about it, we don't always do it, but.
Yeah. With hands lifted high. Telling y'all, it's in the Bible. It's not a Pentecostal thing. Just saying. Any questions on that? Comments? Tina, you weren't here for all those Bible studies, were you? No.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Someone from First Christian Church told me today that if they saw someone in their church lift their hands, then they would. But they're
Really?
afraid to because they don't see anyone else doing it.
Oh, that's good to know. Woo-hoo.
Lead it out, Donna. Go ahead.
Sally can go up to your waist.
Yeah, she can get it up right here.
Right there.
That's a win, right?
I don't know, You might have made me speechless.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Hebrews. We talk about the Hebrew people. Now this is the one that throws a lot of people off because it's like, I don't get it. Where does Hebrew come from? Well, the name means one from beyond. In other words, you ain't from here, right?
Oh, okay.
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 So I got to go back now. Look back up there at those list of 10 names. And one of them kind of has to do with that.
Region beyond.
Eber.
Oh, wait, yeah, but that means region beyond.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
Eber is in Hebrew.
Hebrew is where we get the word Hebrew from, Eber. So Hebrews was a way of saying from the lineage of
Oh.
Eber.
Okay.
So one from beyond is from the one who literally was from beyond. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. Anybody remember that old song?
Mhm.
Nope. You're not Baptist enough or Pentecostal enough or something enough.
Must be Church of Christ.
It's in the red book. Questions? I thought I saw a hand over here or something. Scratching. All right. So when we talk about Hebrews, so one thing you can learn tonight is the word Hebrew means a descendant of Eber. And Eber would have been a great-great-grandson of Noah.
Yeah.
It just proves you were in that lineage. Now, one thing I never really could figure out is why that one? Why Eber? Why not Peleg or
Yeah.
Reu or Sereg or one of the, I never could figure it out. I gotta keep digging because my curiosity is through the roof right now and I gotta figure that one out. I didn't have time today
Did you say
of Noah. Yep. So where you see Shem here, you know, Noah goes right there in front of it. So our Faxid would have been his grandson, Selah, his great-grandson, Eber, great-great-grandson of Noah. And so every time you say Hebrew, or you're reading in the book of Hebrews, that is referring to the people who were descendants from Eber.
So like the book of Hebrews.
Was written to all those descendants, which would be the Israelites. Because Israelites, they don't start until you get to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So if you're going to keep going here on this line, you get to Abraham, the next one to put in is Isaac,
Okay.
and then the next one is Jacob. And Jacob was the one God changed his name to Israel. And then his sons and grandsons were the 12 tribes of Israel.
Okay.
Judah. Are we good? Miss Donna, what's the matter over here?
I'm just confused.
Confused? I'm sorry. So when you get to Abraham, he had a son named Isaac,
Yes,
and he had a son named Jacob,
yes,
and God changed Jacob's name to Israel.
I know that.
Okay, so that's all I'm saying.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Okay, wait, so Rudd or whatever, back. What was the meaning of that?
Which one?
Branch.
So Rudd.
Serug is branch.
How did your name here when-
Well, I messed up
Okay,
when I was.
okay, it's your problem.
It's my fault, I'm sorry.
As if I would remember it, that's not.
So, when we hear Israelites, that is the descendants of Jacob.
Right.
When we hear Jews, that's the people who worship like Judah did. When we hear Hebrews, that's descendants of Eber. It's all in the same family tree.
Wouldn't the Jews also be descendants of Jacob too?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Well, his son was Judah.
Right.
Jacob's son was Judah.
I do think it's a little confusing.
It is confusing.
Yeah.
But
But
all
that,
these people.
But it's,
I'm just here to explain to you where it come from.
yeah.
Yeah,
We can keep it
I appreciate
confusing,
that.
but I just, because we do, people talk about that a lot. Well, I hear about the Israelites, I hear about the Hebrews, I hear about the Jews. Why are they so different? Well, they're really not.
Right.
that was my, they really are the same, it's just
It's all the same.
distinctions.
Right,
Okay,
right.
Okay,
So when you hear Jew, that is more a reference of how they worship.
okay.
Okay.
Because, I mean, when you think about it, they're all not descendants of Judah. Some are descendants of Dan and Benjamin and Joseph and Reuben and Simeon and all those other guys. So when you hear Jew, that is more of a religious term. That's how they worship. It's like saying Baptist, Pentecostal,
So
First Christian,
they're,
whatever.
they're all interchangeable.
They're
but
all
there are
interchangeable. Right.
Details, just like you said, the
Right.
churches have specific things
Right,
that makes
right.
them different.
So when you go to Israel now, do not assume that everybody's a Jew. They're all Hebrews, because they're all from a descendant of Eber. But they don't all worship exactly the same. There are Israelis, which is what Fox and CNN calls them. There are Israelis that are Islam. There's Israelis that are Christian. There's Israelis that are Jewish. There's Israelis that are all those things. They're not all Jews. Okay? But in biblical terms, we hear that talked about a lot. In fact, in the Bible, they're first called Jews in the book of Esther. You read in the book of Esther, that's when you first start hearing that reference made. Which if you think about it, under Esther, that was when they were in captivity. Well, how do we refer to all these people? Well, apparently they must have still been worshiping, because it was kind of almost like not a slang term, but it was, they didn't just call them children of Israel. It was, they're Jews. They're still worshiping. Just trying to clear up some mud and some details. We're swimming in it. I know tonight's a little crazy.
Stir up some more.
I think you're stirring the mud rather than clearing it up.
What's confusing?
It's clear now.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just saying it's,
I think we've asked before, what is the little, pyramid, Genesis 1, what is that?
That's the Tower of Babel.
That's the tower.
And I'm gonna talk about
But
that
they've got
later.
the Tower of Babel over in Peleg.
Yeah, this is all the same time frame.
Okay.
That same line, okay.
This is all in the same time frame, happening all at the same time.
Why did they put it there then?
Because that's who built it. Yep. And they're drawing that line over here to Peleg. Okay. Tonight, I knew this was gonna be a little different. I just wanted to point out lots of details.
You know, your church analogy cleared things up for me.
Okay.
Cause it just did.
So, you could be a Jew if you wanted to be, but you're not an Israeli, you're not a Hebrew,
Uh-huh. Right.
and they will be quick to tell you that.
That's
It's a-
when Sammy Davis became a Jew.
Yeah, but he's no Hebrew. It's kind of neat though, when you're over there, I mean, there's some of them, they can tell you which tribe they're from. They know their lineage all the way back. They can tell you they're from the tribe of Judah, the tribe of whatever tribe they're from, of those 12 tribes. They can tell you. But the one thing they all have in common is they're all Israelites, or Israelis, and they're all Hebrews. So Hebrew and Israelite is two, same thing.
They're not all Jews.
But they're not all Jews, because Jews are how they worship.
I've never heard any of that before, so, I mean, that's interesting.
Stephanie, Jackie, anything?
I'm glad there's not a test.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I left a lot of notes at home too, or back at the office.
Good.
Yeah.
We
I knew
can only
tonight was
take
gonna be
so
just okay.
much.
It's okay. I knew it wouldn't be theological, but it was just gonna be just
I think it's
info.
good. I love it.
info, okay? Just a couple interesting notes. You'll notice in the lifespan of Shem, he is still alive when Abraham is born. Okay, I want to set this big chart back there. I just think this is cool. I know not everybody can see this thing. I apologize for that. But when you start following it, I'll leave this up here and y'all come look at it here in a minute, but when you follow this and you look at how long they lived, you see that Shem doesn't die until right here. Well, he's still alive when Isaac is alive. Now, by this time, though, Abraham and Isaac, they've moved over, into what they call the land of Canaan. Okay? He's probably still living in that land where, the Tigris, Euphrates, and all that is. Okay, because all of that where they lived, sorry y'all, was this area right here. Okay? So, but Abraham moved over here, and we're going to study that in a different lesson. But I just think it's so cool that it's likely, I'm not going to say for sure it happened, but it's very likely that Abraham could have learned about the flood from Shem, who would have helped build the ark. To me, that's one of the things of this chart that has really opened my eyes. And Shem could have learned about the Garden of Eden from his grandpa and great-grandpa, who could have heard it from Adam himself. I mean, it literally could have been just 1, 2 hand-me-downs. They could have learned about the awesomeness of God in a garden and how God created everything and how everything was formed. You know, and one of the questions that I've always asked was, how in the world could Abraham, like when you're reading the book of Genesis, and all of a sudden this guy named Abram hears from God and says, go find a city that you don't know what it looks like. Like, how bizarre, right? But he instantly recognized that voice. How would he have known? There's no way it was that he was 86 years old and just randomly God picks a random man out of the planet to speak to. No, it was very intentional here. And he could have heard those stories passed down, not through 21 generations, even though it was 21 generations. It could have been just a simple him to him to him to him. And think of how clear the message could have remained.
It's not like the telephone game.
Exactly.
Where it goes through 21,
Yeah,
it changes.
21 people,
Yeah.
you're not even in the
You're not
same
getting
time zone.
message, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just love this when we talk about Abraham and his faith, and how did this man have so much faith that he could just take off with his family? Well, he knew what God was capable of, because he very likely could have heard stories, because all these people are still alive.
So now I wanna know how Mary got chosen, and who knew her, and how all that.
Can we wait? Yeah. Okay. Something else, just for any history buffs in here. You know, we have learned a lot from Hammurabi. Do you remember that name at all? He founded Babylon. I may not be pronouncing it right. Hammurabi Code, the Code of Living, that was formed in Babylon. They had the big Rosetta Stone that had some of that stuff still on it, right? That's the same time frame as Abraham's life. So when Abraham is leaving that land, that's when that was all taking shape. So you're talking about the same kind of time frame of history there, okay? And I may do it next week, get into the life of Abraham and what all was happening during that time frame, why Abraham was so significant in Scripture, why they had to move, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of setting it up right now for next week. So I've given y'all a ton of information tonight on purpose.
I want to thank you. We've been reading the New Testament in a year, and just reading now, like through Acts, it's like you can really start visualizing things much more clear.
Yep.
So where are we on that?
Right here. We're right there. Jesus is right here.
Yep, I knew that.
We're all there right here. Someone else. So where did Job live? Where was that at? Up there?
Southeast of Israel.
Southeast of Israel. Okay. Roughly what time frame do we think Job lived in?
After the
After the flood.
After the flood. See, y'all learning, right?
Now ask us what we really.
How many different nations were started out of Shem's children? See, y'all learning. Here's your test. Look at there. And major nations too. Okay? Now, I'm gonna give you one more thought. This really isn't that deep, but it's just something to think about. So, from Shem, we get to Arphaxad, Selah, Eber, which became Hebrew, Peleg, the division, Reu, our friend, all these. When we talk about Ham and Japheth, which we haven't got to yet, you know, we can see a lot of world religion in this, okay? But if you stop and think about it, it's this line right here that we get Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All come right there. Tina, your wheels are spinning.
Yeah, I know. Why is it there?
Because it was after Abraham
Yeah.
So Abraham had Ishmael first, and it's Ishmael's lineage that started Islam. Okay, then you got Jacob, where you get Judaism from, which is where you get Christianity from. So of the three religions that are fighting over Jerusalem right now, it all comes from the same family tree. It's just family fighting. Just a
You
little
spent
background.
a lot of hours
Yeah.
putting this,
Probably.
well, but you're passionate about it. I
I
mean,
love it.
and
So I also had Mo print me off that map last time, the Chaldean map y'all look at. It's the one that's got those 4 cities where the Dead Sea are: Sodom, Gomorrah,
Yes.
Zibion, and Adn, whatever, all right there. Yeah, I'm using this at a different, the church Bible study deal, but I thought I'd bring it if any of y'all want to take a closer look at it.
so are you doing this at a Bible study at church or
Wednesday
on
night.
Sunday? So it's a
Wednesday
real
night,
Bible,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so this, tomorrow night is the last lesson we had. They're gonna
Okay.
learn about the division of land and all that stuff tomorrow night. I told them to bring their notebooks.
So we're gonna do Japheth and,
We'll do Japheth and Ham, and then
Next time.
Abraham. So those are our next 3 probably. The Ham one, I might hold off until I have my picture,
oh,
because it has to do with that.
okay.
Yeah,
And Ham was cursed.
Ham was the cursed one. Yep,
His descendants were,
his descendants.
Yeah.
Especially,
his son,
yep, Canaan.
Canaan. And my little commentary says that the Canaanite nation, a nation God knew would become wicked. And the curse was fulfilled when the Israelites entered the promised land and drove the Canaanites out.
They didn't drive them all out. They didn't obey.
No,
That's why they were in a bind forever.